Broadcasting from Baltimore, Maryland, this is 5x3 Radio, where strength is for everyone. I'm your host, Emily Sokolinski, owner of 5x3 Training, a strength and conditioning gym in Baltimore, along with my co-host, Rebecca Fishburne, founder of Cornerstone Strength Maryland. Each week, Rebecca and I will discuss the ins and outs of strength training, why there is a no one-size-fits-all approach, and why strength is so important in our daily lives. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now, on with the show. I really wish we had recorded our conversation on Sunday.
Yeah, you guys keep doing this. You have these
That's not my problem. That's him.
You have these brainstorming conversations where you guys come up with all kinds of smart things to say and then leave me out in the dark. So it's like, then we all get together and you're like, let's say smart things. And she'll be our foil.
Somehow I don't think that's the way it works out.
He just gets excited and starts talking about things, and I'm sitting there knitting, and he's like, and then I'm going, I really wish we were recording this. I really wish we were recording this because I'm not going to remember any of this come Friday. Yeah. So I think in the last podcast, we were discussing.
You need to do your thing?
I'm doing my thing right now.
This is the way the thing starts.
This is the way the thing starts. This is how we start.
It's the lead up to the thing.
We just jump right into hello and welcome back to another 5x3 Radio podcast. We are here again with Diego.
I think a permanent guest at this point.
At best, a summer guest.
Once September rolls around, we lose him. Or the topics get boring again. Boring topics, so he's not going to join us then. But he's back again for another question from a listener. And this one, I think we spoke about at the end of the last podcast, what we would talk about. And it was a question from one of our listeners in Texas about RPE.
You mean auto-regulation.
Auto-regulation. And he said, you and Rebecca mentioned RPE in a couple of your June podcasts, kind of off on the side. And he wanted to basically get our take on what does RPE mean for you? This is what it means for me. And he kind of gave me his email was just like how he regulates himself. But for many people, what does that mean? There's been a lot of, talk about RPE over the, I don't know how many years now. And we've never really discussed it because it's just not something that, comes up in casual conversation while we're talking about things. But we would like to discuss it in terms of auto-regulating oneself. And how does somebody learn to do that when, as Diego and I were discussing on Sunday night, without a coach, when they don't have somebody who is there watching their reps, watching their sets, and helping them to kind of regulate themselves, how to help them with their programming. How does somebody who doesn't have that person, or perhaps even has an online coach, so someone who's not watching them, in real time, but after the fact. So they're training on their own, they're videoing for their coach, but something's going on with their training that week, that day. How do they now decide what to do? If something the program's not going as it should, or the training day is not going as it should, let's say, for what's programmed. So I think, is that kind of where we were thinking of going, Diego?
I think that the conversation that Rebecca was not party to.
Sorry.
Yeah. I'll see if I can read your minds.
Sorry, Rebecca. I proposed two restrictions for this conversation.
Yes.
One, which you just mentioned, is whoever we're talking about is somebody who is not training under the real-time supervision of a coach. So let's rule those people out right now for the purposes of this discussion. And also, I propose that we rule out novices, whatever that means.
Yes.
So I don't know what definition we want to use of novice, but I don't know. Let's arbitrarily say anybody who's been training less than a year, just some arbitrary cutoff. And I propose that we use those two exclusion criteria because if somebody's training under the direct supervision of a coach, it's probably the coach's job to manage their training, their load, their volume, whatever. So that's not auto-regulated anymore. It's externally regulated, so it's irrelevant. And the novice exclusion, for two reasons. One, I think because if we don't exclude novices, we're going to get hung up on all sorts of things that are not productive discussion. And also, honestly, because I don't think, at least Emily and I, do not give any sort of auto-regulated programming to rank novices. So I don't know that we have a particularly valuable opinion on whether that is a good or a bad thing, because we don't do it. So I figured let's exclude those two populations for the purposes of this discussion. Are you okay with that, Rebecca?
Sounds good to me. It's reasonable.
So basically, we're talking about an intermediate or beyond lifter who trains who coaches themselves, or at most has an offline coach. By that I mean a coach who may be providing feedback, not delayed feedback.
Right. So actually, ironically, like an online coach.
Ironically, an online coach.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
And you, and this is something, I mean, I don't have currently I don't have any online clients. I do have somebody who's starting with me.
The gym does.
The gym
you
does.
Personally don't.
I personally don't. My clients, my coaches do. My coaches have
this would be the right opportunity for you to plug the 5x3 online coaching services.
But I wanted to turn it over to, I want to ask Rebecca, because you do have quite a few. You have quite a few online clients. And, we were just talking actually even earlier in the kitchen about one of my clients I do see in person. How do you maybe I'm jumping ahead of myself, and you can stop.
Yeah, let's start.
I'm jumping ahead of myself, but I do want to talk to you about how you personally maybe help your clients auto-regulate themselves. Those who have been with you for a long time.
Why don't we start by talking about?
I'm jumping ahead.
Why one would want to do that as a lifter, or why one would want to do that as an online coach? Right. That might be a good question for Rebecca.
Yes. There we go.
Are you starting?
Why auto-regulate?
Yeah, why auto-regulate? Especially for someone for you who does coach quite a few online clients. Why is auto-regulation a good idea to teach your lifters who you don't see in person?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think if you have a lifter and you set them up with a program and they miss a rep, like even in an LP, right? There's usually some guidelines, even if the lifter isn't with you, about what to do with a missed rep. Like go back and get that missed rep, and then repeat that weight, add your certain amount the next time after that, so on and so forth. Like you want to have some kind of guidelines in place for your lifter if you're not there to tell them what to do in the moment, whether that's a missed rep, whether that's a set or a workout where things feel off, and something that should be a relatively easy volume day feels really grindy and terrible. So RPE is just like a convenient way to try and have a common language about situations when a person might need to make some changes in the moment. Like you're watching the lifts, you see them over a couple of weeks, you see that the lifts are getting heavy. Maybe there's, really slow fifth rep. Maybe, you're expecting that something's going to need to change. But you're going to see maybe they've got one more week or something like that. But, if you get a confluence of factors like lack of sleep, poor nutrition, lots of stress, something that you think might be a difficult top set ends up being something that's almost impossible for them that day. So you want them to have some kind of guidelines about if that situation arises, like when do you decide to call the set, or so when you decide to call it and not push it to the point where something unfortunate would happen.
But you're doing, I mean, are you doing this with your lifters who have been with you for, as Diego says, like these are not novices, these are people who have been training with you for a while. And do you put that in place in their, I mean, on the log that you share with them or the email, or how do you, I mean, you've instruct them, this is your program for the week, or this is what we're going for if this should occur. I mean, is that a program? Is that just notes? How do you teach them?
I mean, that's sort of like in a similar way to like if you had somebody and they knew if they missed a rep in a set that was supposed to be a set of 15, that they would come back and after they were done and do a fourth set to make up that rep. So they still got their 15, but it wouldn't be in the conventional 3 sets of 5, say, while it's on an NLP or, maybe even at another point in their programming. So kind of just similar guidelines in terms of RPE if it's a lifter that, so I set that up ahead of time. Sorry.
Gotcha. Yeah. So they're aware. They're
parameters,
right,
like ahead of time. Yeah.
Right. Like you'll say to them, okay, this is, maybe even say, I want you to get anywhere between 1 to 3. Like top, weight at this top set, let's say. So they're supposed to hit like a single, or they can meet, if it feels good, maybe they'll do a double that day. And then maybe I'm like talking about like a squat. I mean, you set that up for them in their programming. It's already kind of there for them. So they know they're supposed to hit X number of reps, and they have this, they have these reps to kind of go between.
Yeah. And then, I will actually also sometimes use that like near the end of a block, if there's a volume day that I want to be more of a recovery for them. Like I have one lifter who it seems like whenever work stress happens, his lifts are kind of unexpectedly difficult and the RPE is high. And so, there are multiple ways that I talk about RPE with people, and I have a couple different charts that I use. Some of them have to do with, straight up reps left in the tank. Mm-hmm. How many more reps could you do? And that, if you maybe have one more, then that's like 9.5. If it's something you're not even thinking about, and it's, like it's a 6 or a something. If you could, so there's reps left in the tank, but there's also like form deviation, RPE, right? So this one particular lifter will sometimes do squat in particular, where he won't necessarily feel like it's that difficult, but it's the form is so off, like the left knee caves, the whole system sways. Like he'll tell me it wasn't difficult, and I'm like, the possibility for injury with that form is pretty high. So like as far as form goes, form RPE, I say that's a 10. I'm not concerned about your actual internal rating of perceived exertion. Externally, I'm looking at that, and I don't want you to do another rep because you looked like you were about to fall over. So,
but that's something that you're doing after the fact. That's not in person.
Yeah, right. So with that lifter, he's videoing, he sees them, he knows what to look for. We've had these conversations multiple times. He can feel when these things are happening. And so he's got guidelines about that. And we've talked about RPE in multiple ways, like not just how he feels while he's in the lift, but, when he's watching the lift, that's maybe more of what you would call like the coach's RPE as opposed to the lifter RPE. So he's learned to read his lifts on video using more of an objective coach's RPE, and can consider them in terms of form deviation. And think about that, but that's not how he feels in the moment. He's got to look at it on the video and kind of see it. And so he's got some guidelines and parameters. If it's a heavy lift and work stress is really bad, and he sees that his form is all wonky, then he knows what to do.
So there's a couple of interesting things there. One is, I think you discussed the fact that your lifter is not left to his own devices, does not rate his sets the same way as you would want him to rate his sets. So you have to communicate with him to say that this is what I call, you will use RPE, RIR, any metric or any descriptor of difficulty. You're having to communicate with him somehow. This is what I call a X, a 9, an 8, whatever it is your target is. That's what generally people call anchoring, right? That's anchoring the scale, because you don't know that your 8 and his 8 agree with each other. So you have to go through a process of educating your lifter on what you mean when you say 8.
Yeah.
And it sounds like... Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and it goes both ways, right? Like me educating him, but also listening to how he's rating them and understanding and like seeing the play back and forth. Because even though I've consistently, like I've worked with him for several years now, and I've consistently talked to him about his rating for RPE is less than what mine would be. So he'll tell me something is an RPE 7 and it looks like the, bar is going to crash or something. And I'll explain to him why I would give it a different rating. And he's still, he knows he underrates them. He continues to do that. So like I've adjusted also. And if I want him to do something that's an RPE 8.5, I'll tell him 8. And he still thinks he's like upward adjusting, but I know he's not.
So do you ever, so with somebody like this who is misrating his, according to you, misrating his, reps in reserve or whatever, do you ever actually calibrate the scale? Do you ever tell him, I want you to do a rep max at this weight because I want to, they're supposed to be an 8, get as many reps as you can. And let's see. Do you ever do that?
Like say, do 2 more after that, so we know if it's an 8 or...
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, if you had planned to do, I don't know, a 3 at 8 at 300 pounds, I'm just making that up. The prediction or the guess is that 300 pounds would be 3 at 8, but you tell them, I want you to do 300 pounds AMRAP. Do you ever calibrate the scale?
Yeah, no, not with this particular lifter, because when he gets into what I'm describing or what I'm thinking of as an RPE 9, the form on those is deviated to the point where I'm concerned about injury risk.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be safe to do that.
Yeah, not with this particular individual. I wouldn't be,
or at least not with whichever lift you're discussing. I mean, maybe if you're having the person do chin-ups, maybe the risk of form deviation resulting in injury is much lower. So maybe
not worried about that. Like you don't make it all the way up to the bar. Who cares?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe would you calibrate the scale there?
I mean, that's a good idea. I don't know. I don't know about the translatability. I could try it. I could see.
Oh, well, no, I don't think it would translate to like squats, but at least you would have a proper scale for chin-ups or whichever thing you're testing with. I'm just curious because
and actually, I mean, like the chin-ups kind of do end up being AMRAP to fail, because I'll say, okay, that set of 10 looked good. Let's try it with a weight next time. See how many you get.
Yeah. Because that's obviously one of the potential issues with deciding load or reps or sets based on perception is whether or not that perception is accurately calibrated, right? So that's something that people are concerned about. And obviously there's some literature and stuff at this point, which is partly why I wanted to exclude novices, because novices have no idea how hard things are.
Right.
That's
everything's hard.
Completely expectable, and therefore we should not worry about that.
Yeah.
So you've described so far a use of RIR, RPE, something like that, for the purposes of keeping your clients safe, I guess. That's basically what you seem to have described. You're concerned with the form past a certain RPE.
Yeah, I mean, like that would be one instance or one example that kind of maybe more pertains to the intensity day. But sometimes if someone like an online lifter has been experiencing a lot of additional stress or poor eating or something, and I want their light day not to be a whole crap ton more additional stress, I might say, like, okay, your heavy lift this week was your Monday heavy lift was more challenging than we expected, and the light day, we don't want that to be even more taxing. So I might do something like that, auto-regulate on a day when a lifter, or in a week when a lifter is experiencing significant stress or impaired recovery. I might have them.
And what are you regulating? The load, the reps, the sets, all of the above?
Usually the load. Like I would generally keep the same rep set scheme. But if they do their first prescribed, kind of like you would do in the gym when somebody shows up at the gym and they do the weight that is set on the program and just things are wonky, right? But I'm not there to look at it and say that looks wonky. So if they're working on their own and things feel wonky, let's pull it back a little bit. So, maybe you do the first volume set, which ideally I would say would be around a 7.5 for a volume lift, for 5 sets of 5. And if that ends up being like a 9 out of the blue, take some weight off. Find something that's not, And again, I think like sometimes that depends on the lifter. If it's the lifter that has significant form deviations when the RPE is high, I don't want to chance it on a volume day. When they could just pull some weight off, get a little bit more recovery that week, and then come back at it the next week.
The reason I ask is that obviously if not the originator, I think the originator, certainly the most prominent early user of RPE for the purposes of programming strength training, powerlifting, is Mike Teixeira. And the way he would originally use it is he would use it as a gauge of readiness, but then also primarily as a way to modulate training volume for the day, not training load as much.
Yeah.
So his early stuff is,
but you're only doing 3 today because you hit RPE 9 on the 3rd.
Yeah, normal he would do like pretty common early Mike Teixeira strategy is you would do a set at RPE whatever the prescription was, 8, 9, whatever, and then take X% off and keep doing sets until the RPE rises back to the original prescription. So that would just auto-regulate the amount of volume. And obviously, if I take a bigger drop, I'm going to do more volume. If I take a smaller drop, I'm going to do less volume. But regardless, it's going to control the amount of volume that I do without changing the load. So there are different ways of doing this. So I was curious as to how. It sounds like you primarily allow the load to vary.
Yeah, I actually have done both, because like some of the times, especially on the back off sets, like if somebody gets a top heavy and then they're going to do 3 sets of 2 at a percentage as a back off, but they start to get up into the 9.5 range. Okay, you're done. Call it for the day. Move on to the next lift. That's sufficient. Move on. Yep. So I have actually done both, but I didn't really think about it that way.
Yeah, and I would say that that's what happens in the gym setting where you actually being coached. Usually somebody's watching that set and they're going, you know what, that one got really slow. Maybe just stop.
Yeah.
We also know that there's, in trained, experienced lifters, pretty good correlation between bar speed and RPE. Reported RPE. It's obviously not perfect, but it's reasonable. So it's a cheap substitute for velocity measuring device, which is an entirely other can of worms, right? Okay, that's interesting. You've been very quiet, Emily.
I've just been listening to the conversation and taking it all and thinking. about.
Yeah, like you guys had the conversation, then you put me on the spot.
No. But the thing is, it's
no, we were giving you an opportunity to shine, Rebecca.
As I said, yeah. we have online clients. I don't personally have any online clients. I will be working with someone soon, but so all my work is done in person with people who I can see, immediately how to help them regulate their training, especially my lifters who have been, and I do it with my novice lifters. They don't know what that's called. They haven't been taught that. I tell them what to do. But then my lifters who have been with me for a year plus, 2 or 3 years, they can easily regulate themselves. I can give them a program, and I can give them a guide, and they hit those numbers as the program calls for. I don't need to hold their hand doing it. Whereas, my newer lifters, I do it. That's why we're not talking about novices. Those people are just told by me what to do. But I want to talk about now what happens. How do we help people who don't have coaches, either online or in person, who are training at home on their own? And these are the people who are asking questions on like the Facebook page, right? They're asking questions on powerlifting pages or starting strength page or whatever the page is about. I did this, and what do I do now, right? And they're getting all this feedback from various people. How do we help those people who maybe these people have been training for a while, but they've never had a coach, or maybe they worked with one for maybe a short period of time and they never got to that place where they needed to learn how to auto-regulate their own training. Do we want to talk about that? Like, how do we help those people? What are some things that they can start to think about, or they should be thinking about with their training as they continue to do this? This is the tricky part, right?
Can we first establish a little bit why? So we jumped into discussing, I guess, in particular, Rebecca's practices with her online clients.
I think it's why should we do this?
But both you and Rebecca used the word, well, I give somebody a program, and so it seems like the alternative to auto-regulation is, because that's what I would like to understand. It's like, do we have to auto-regulate? And if not, what is the alternative? It seems like the alternative to me to auto-regulation is to follow a written program as is, right? That's sort of the alternative. If somebody else is regulating you. And let's narrow this down even more. Like, okay, you don't even have an online coach. You just go to the gym and you manage your own coaching. Or if you have an online coach, it's just like you bought a template kind of thing, right? So there's the program.
Right.
So that's the alternative to auto-regulation in my mind. So why would one need ever to auto-regulate if one could instead just follow a program?
Well, I think because even following the program, I mean, it's just numbers on a piece of paper. That program doesn't know you're weak. That program doesn't know that you only had 5 hours of sleep. The program doesn't know that you were sick.
But even if I sleep, let's even assume that you're sleeping well, you're eating well. Let's say all that stuff is fine. Let's say that we don't have that much variation due to that. Even then, you've seen the first slide that I use in our programming thing is a programming workshop or programming talks. The definition of programming is the unreasonable expectation that you can predict client performance 12 weeks out, right? So if you're doing a quote unquote program from a spreadsheet, from a well-meaning coach, from anybody, it doesn't matter whether they're the most experienced or the least experienced person putting together that program. That program does not have a way of predicting the future. It's making some assumptions about the way you're going to react to the stimuli that are laid out in the program.
Right.
And based on those assumptions, it makes some progression recommendations, because any program that's not completely stupid has some progression to it, right? So it makes some recommendations on progression based on some assumption. And oftentimes that works, but then eventually it stops working. Right. So and then what do you do at that point? you
what do you do?
You have a number of choices. You can you can just buy a different template, right? You can do Shako for a while, and then you can do Smolov, and then you could go to a different Russian. Or maybe the program itself has some way of structuring blocks, but again, it's built on certain assumptions where it doesn't see you, so it has to make assumptions about your rate of progress. And the way that anybody gets in trouble with any program is when the rate of progress, for whatever reason, does not match what the program's prescription is.
Right.
So the rate of progress that they're actually reaping is less than the rate of progress that the program is expecting of you. That's when you get in trouble. That's when things don't keep going forward. On top of that, if you throw, as you suggest, variability from other factors that are outside of the purview of the program, food, stress, sleep, whatever else it may be, then you have a pretty wide range of circumstances where you may be asked to do something by the program that you are not currently able to do. The more advanced you are, the more likely that is to happen, which is partly why we're excluding novices, because novices usually are working well below their actual capability.
Right.
So the program can ask all sorts of things that would be unreasonable for a more advanced lifter. But since the person is such a novice, they're working with so much headroom. Even if you push them a little too hard, they can still do it.
Right.
But that's no longer true once you're not a novice. So I propose that this is where auto-regulation comes in. It's not an if, it's almost the only thing you can do. Once you get to a point where you can't just slavishly follow the assumptions of a program that was written without access to real-time information about your progress.
Right. Right.
So that's my thing.
But how does one do
that?
That's why you need to auto-regulate.
Yeah. How does one learn to auto-regulate? And to help, because that's good. They're going to hit the wall. They're going to do it. They're running a program and they're eventually going to hit a wall. And usually those people just kind of trying to smash through the wall instead of realizing that either the program has to change, and when does the program change? And,
Well, you made a very good point. And I think we talked about this a little bit on Sunday. There are some people for whom auto-regulation is easier than for other people to put into practice or to make work. You just talked about people keep hitting the wall. Okay, we've already ruled out all the novices. So these are people who have stuck around doing something hard, uncomfortable for a year plus. So these are people who are okay with something difficult at the gym. And furthermore, they are keen on improving their performance. In my experience, these people are more likely to overdo it than they are to underdo it.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, there might be exceptions to this, but again, if you really don't like working hard, you've already dropped out of this getting strong game before the point that we're discussing.
Yep.
You're either a novice and you don't know yet because you haven't really worked hard, or whatever, or you're about to drop out. But if you're in year, 2 years, 3 years, you're into this, you like to work hard. So the problem is not that you're not willing to work hard enough. I don't think that auto-regulation is a get out of jail free card for that person. That person doesn't want a get out of jail free card. That person wants to get swole and strong.
Right.
So auto-regulation in that case ends up being more of a tool for the coach, exactly like Rebecca described at the beginning, to keep the lifter from doing things that would be counterproductive.
Yeah.
So I don't know why we should be too worried about auto-regulation, again, in intermediate advanced lifters, because it's not a get out of jail free card. It's not a license to just go to the gym and do something easy.
Exactly.
That person doesn't want to do something easy. That's not a problem we need to fix.
Yeah, you're trying to teach the person how to pull back and learn when they need to adjust, when they need to adjust, when they need to adjust their volume, adjust their load, because they're starting to they're starting to hit the wall. And you just can't keep eventually adding 5 pounds and keep thinking you're going to do a set of 5. It doesn't work like that. That's the person who, that's what this is for. The person who wants to, as Diego said, wants to be stronger, wants to continue to improve, but isn't sure, gets to a point where they don't know how to go from point A to point B to point C. They get to B and now they're stuck and they're still at B. And they can't break that wall to get to C because they're still trying to hit sets of 5. Yeah,
this is for the person who has gotten themselves into a situation where they're constantly working to failure.
Exactly.
Which, again, in I think our experience is not uncommon in this tranche of lifters, in this sort of intermediate transitioning to advanced type of lifter. That person is actually quite likely to be working to failure over and over and over,
right,
at roughly the same weight.
The lifter too, who when they're in the gym with you is going to be really reluctant even to hear like a coach say, okay, let's call that, no more sets, you're done, let's go on to, they don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
But they're not going to generate that message internally. They need to hear it from somebody from the outside. And if they're lifting by themselves, if they don't have a coach to tell them that, then how do you learn to do that on your own?
Yeah.
Because the lifter that you're describing, the one who's maybe like 2 years in, he's like, no, this is what the program says.
Yes.
And this is what I have to do.
Yes.
And so there's like a learning process there too that needs to happen about when it's okay to pull things back, that it's not get out of jail free.
No, but it's also, I think it also, to me, this sounds like, it's hard when when you're running a program and the program stops working because the program's not going to last forever. And if you don't have a coach or someone to guide you, you don't know what to do. You could read a ton of books to figure out, but no one's going to say, and at this point in your program, you're going to stop being able to do X and you're going to have to switch. And that's where our programming lectures, right, come in. That's why we try to help people figure out, well, when is that? When does that program have to change? That's kind of part of this auto-regulation, is acknowledging that I've run this as long as I can. But so many people don't realize that. That's why they've been doing this for 5 years, right? I've been doing starting strength for 5 years. Because what they've been doing...
Yeah, that's auto-regulation on a long time scale.
Because they've been doing it over and over and over again, because they don't realize that in actuality, those sets of 5 are no longer valid. Like they just can't do it. Things have had to change. Volume has had to change. Intensity has had to change. Sets and reps have had to change. They're doing a 4-day split is now going to be better for them, but they don't know this. There's only so much they can do for themselves, and many people have figured it out, I guess. They figured out how to adjust their program, but with many cases, they haven't, and they end up either hurting themselves or stopping because they get frustrated because they're not making progress. Am I right? Or because...
Yeah, you are. And I think you're describing auto-regulation on a long time scale.
Right.
That either wholesale changing from one program block to a different program block, or a slowly evolving and adapting program. Whatever your programming style is, you can think of that, if you're doing it for yourself, as auto-regulation on a long time scale. And I don't think anybody has a problem with that. I don't think anybody gets hives when that is mentioned.
Right.
Unless somebody is, switching programs every week, which doesn't count, because usually training programs have longer time horizons.
Right.
I think where people get hives is where the auto-regulation is at the intra-session level. Mm-hmm. Because even in the session-to-session level, there are, or week-to-week level, right? There are many programs that have built-in mechanisms for estimating how you should progress either from one block to the next. Maybe you do a block, and then at the end of the block, you test your maximums, and then you apply a percentage for the next block. Or maybe you do some sort of rep test, and based on the number of reps that you get, you use an adjustment for the next week or the next block.
Right.
There are many such strategies, and some people like them, some people don't. But I don't think anybody gets into their panties in a wad over those. I think it's the intra-session.
I say that so much.
Auto-regulation that people get really upset with.
Yeah.
Okay, so explain why.
Oh, I don't know why, but I'm just describing what I observe, right? I mean, wouldn't you agree with that?
I don't think
that people are super upset about, like in Jim Wendler's 531, you do, there's an AMRAP set, and you kind of use that AMRAP set to calibrate the incremental loading, right. Whatever. And I don't think that gets people very upset on the internet. But when I see people discussing intra-session regulation, primarily based on RPE, RIR, whatever you want to call that, or honestly, even velocity-based training, that gets people much more upset. I think that for the RPE, RIR is the certainly in the RPE is the perceived exertion, right? The fact that there's a perception in the name of the technique, which is why I was asking Rebecca about whether her lifters ever calibrate their scale, because I think the concern is that is the scale going to be accurate enough so that the modification that you make ends up having a positive outcome, as opposed to the estimate is so far off that the modification that you make is detrimental. I think that's the concern, right?
Yeah. Like that it becomes like too easy.
Correct.
Yes.
Now, again, in my experience using forms of auto-regulation with lifters, my experience has been the opposite, that if anything, it becomes too hard. So if I tell somebody to do it 3 at 8, so I should say again, we're talking about people here who are not a novice, and they're trying to get stronger or bigger. So they're actively trying to get better at this. So the bias in the program should always be for progression, right? So what I tell somebody is, if all things being equal, add weight, right? But what I'm telling you to do is, let's say 3 at 8. And they're going to base that on the last week's 3 at 8 and how they're feeling today. Now, not how they're feeling as in, this abstract sense of how I'm feeling as a human, but there's going to be structured warm-ups that are going to lead up to this 3 at 8. And we're going to kind of check in on each one of those warm-ups to see how that quote unquote felt in terms of, was it in line with the level of effort that I think it should have been? So again, if you go back to Cher's initial methodology for this, which has changed over the years, but it's still reasonable. You would approach that 3 at 8 by doing a 3 at 7 and a 3 at 6. So there'd be a 1 RPE stop, which depending on the person could be anywhere between 2 and 4% or so of the weight on the bar, right? There will be a 1 RPE stop between each one of these warm-ups. So you just did 3 at 7. That is reasonably good data to help you predict what 3 at 8 should be. And maybe it's not even all based on perception. Maybe it's like Rebecca said, maybe you're filming your sets and you just look at the bar speed on your previous set and use that to determine what your next set should be. So really, at that point, it's not so much a perception. You can kind of put the coach's hat on in between sets, look at the video and say, you know what, that felt bad. But when I look at it, the bar speed was just the same as it was for the previous set, which was a lower weight. So it's fine, right? And again, the default bias should be for progression, either the load increases if the progression is geared towards strength, or the volume may increase if it's geared towards muscle growth or whatever. But in my experience, people are more likely to undershoot their RPE. So you tell them to do 3 at 8, and maybe last week or the week before, you looked at it and are like, yeah, you know what? I really do think you had 2 more reps in you. And this week, it's getting slower. And the next week, it's getting slower. And they'll keep calling it 3 at 8. And at some point, you're like, look, I know you're calling it 3 at 8, but I'm looking at you, and now we're half the bar speed that we were 3 weeks ago. This can't be an 8. And that's what happens most often, I think, with the people that we give this type of programming to. It's not the opposite. It's not the fact that the person keeps doing the same weight over and over.
They keep adding.
What we tend to see is the occasional dip. Like if there's an 8-week training block, maybe on 1 or 2 of those weeks, the person will go down in load or reps, whatever, will down regularly. But most of the time, I find people tend to be on target or get overly ambitious. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that agrees with what you see, Rebecca.
Yeah, I mean, and the couple of lifters that I've worked with the longest that I've also been able to work with in person but are primarily online, like it's been a several-year learning process for them about themselves too, about how they typically overshoot, underrate their RPE. They've had to learn different ways to look at it. That's why I tell them to watch the video, look at the video, look at it sort of more objectively. But yeah, typically it is well, last week it was an 8, so this must be an 8 too. Even though when you watch on the video, I don't know, the bar comes off the shins a lot more on the deadlift, or rolls, whatever it is. The system sways while they're squatting, something that they can see that doesn't look right, that they need to learn also is important information about how to understand RPE, bar speed, form deviation, in addition to just that felt heavy, or that felt like crap, or I didn't want to do it, but I did. So it must have been a lower RPE than I expected because I did it.
Survivorship bias.
Yeah, it's a survivorship bias.
I finished the set, therefore it must have been an 8.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a... obviously, Diego was like, RPE, I didn't want to talk about this, people are blah, 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 RPE, screw your feelings kind of thing, but that's not what we're talking about. I mean, we're not talking about screwing your, your feelings. It literally has to do with, the weight on the bar today it's not the same weight as it was last week. You change week to week. We change week to week. I mean, things happen week to week. It's especially as you get, more and more into this, as the weight gets heavier and the volume increases. In the beginning, everything feels heavy. You have no idea what you can, what you are capable of doing. By the time you get a couple of years into this, you are more aware of what you're capable of doing. And you have to be more aware of when you have to back off, because pushing yourself, as you were talking about with your client, Rebecca, to the point of injury, you possibly could do something big just to grind out another rep or so. And you're realizing the form is just, shit. Some of my lifters who are getting into the year into their training are starting to figure that, they'll rack the bar after the 3rd rep, realizing, okay, that was it. I've got 3 today. I got a top triple. And because of just where things are right now in their program, where they are in their life, as far as, work goes, schedule, they're starting to recognize that it's, things have to change, and they might change week to week. The next week, that set of 3 will turn into a set of 5. Just because everything kind of was, falling into place. I have a lifter who squatted this past week, his top set looked so easy. And the week before that, 5 pounds less was just, a struggle. I mean, barely got the set of 5. What happened from week to week? Well, he's just still following.
Right. We discuss, when we talk about programming, right, we talk about the fitness fatigue model, right? So fitness is your underlying capability,
Right.
however that could be measured. And fatigue is anything that depresses that capability. And the combination, the sum of those two is your performance, right? So your performance is your fitness minus your fatigue.
Right.
Being very loose with terms here, but that's roughly how that goes. And the fitness depends on a number of things, many of which are relatively slow moving, but some of them can be a little quicker moving. And the fatigue depends on a lot of things, some of which can move very quickly. As Rebecca was saying, like if you didn't eat or didn't sleep properly, your fatigue can be rather high very quickly, right? It can change day to day. So your ability to perform has a range of variation. Obviously, if you're very strong, you're going to be pretty strong even on a bad day, and you're going to be really, really strong on a good day. But there's a band of performance that you can expect to see, performance variation that you can expect to see day to day. And it's perfectly reasonable to expect if you're going to squat 400 pounds for 5, it's perfectly reasonable to expect that some days 365 for 5 is going to be really damn hard, right? So maybe there's a 10% band or 5% band, whatever it is, that you can expect to happen. And the other thing I think we have to consider is, which I think it gets combined to create this acrimony against autoregulation. Yes, there has to be progression, right? There has to be progressive overload, whatever that means. But that progression is a consequence of your increased ability to perform. Is not necessarily the cause of your increased ability to perform. So if I am stronger, I can lift more weight. It's not that I need to lift more weight in order to be stronger. That's obviously, it can be seen most clearly at the 1 rep max. If I am stronger, I can squat a bigger 1 rep max. In order to increase my 1 rep max, I don't need to squat 5% more than my 1 rep max. That is a logical impossibility, right? So obviously, it's a cart and horse situation. Right. You get stronger, and therefore you can perform better. So then it becomes a question of what gets you stronger.
Right.
What is enough stimulus to get you stronger? And it's easy to confuse the situation from a novice to not a novice. A novice is working so far under their actual capability, mostly because they're uncoordinated, they don't understand how to move, so forth and so on, that in order to do more, they have to do more. Because they have to discover that headroom that exists above them that they don't even know exists. The more advanced lifter doesn't have that much headroom. They need to push that ceiling higher. In order to push that ceiling higher, they need to work at a certain level of effort. But it is unreasonable to say that level of effort has to constantly increase in order for them to be making progress. So if I squat 400 for 5 today, it is unreasonable to say that 400 for 5 next week is going to have no positive impact on my strength. That is silly. 400 for 5 is heavy today, and it's heavy again next week, and probably heavy again the week after that, and one after that too.
Right.
Now, obviously, if I am making progress, how hard it is decreasing over time, right? Because it was really hard this time, and next week it's still pretty damn hard, but not quite. And then, and at some point, lo and behold, what was 400 for 5 at RPE 9 is now 400 for 5 at RPE 8. And that is progress. That means that now I can go do 410 for 5 or whatever it is, right? Because I have gotten stronger. And now in order to squat a set of 5 at RPE 9, it needs to be 410 because I am stronger. So it's not the other way around. So I think sometimes people are scared that this turns into, I'm just going to keep squatting 135 until it feels really good.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you hear from a ranked novice. But
Yes.
you don't hear that from an intermediate to advanced lifter, because they don't want to squat 400 for 5 until it feels better. They want to squat 410. Right? But the reality is that the amount of time it takes for them to go from 400 for 5 to 410 for 5 is an unknown period of time that neither you, the coach, nor they, the lifter, can predict ahead of time. So in order to get that 10-pound increase, they're going to have to work X amount of time, and none of us knows how long that is.
Mm-hmm.
So autoregulation is a way, not necessarily the only way, to calibrate the rate of increased workload to the rate of increased capability, and to adjust for the fact that there is a range of capability, day-to-day variation, that depends on factors that we can't control.
Right.
That's how I see it.
Yeah, that makes good sense.
Yeah. I don't know how much we talk about this. Well, I guess we don't talk about this too much at our programming lectures because it's so short. But did we talk about this at all during the programming workshop? We didn't get a chance to. No.
We were still rushed. I can't remember.
So rushed. Yeah.
We definitely did discuss the fact that progressive overload works backward from the way people often think about it.
Right.
Again, I think when you think about it in the terms of 1 rep maxes, it's obvious. If my 1 rep max is 100, it would be silly to tell me, well, go squat 102 and then your 1 rep max will go up.
Right.
Well, no, all I can do is squat 100. My definition is my 1 rep max.
That's right.
Right. So
I got that for 1 rep.
When we start changing the rep range down to 5s and 10s or whatever, then people somehow don't realize that the same principle is at play. In order to do more, I have to have made an improvement in my capability before I can demonstrate an increased performance.
Right.
So progressive overload is simply the consequence of the fact that I have made an improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess implicit in that, well, it's not implicit, but most of the time we tell people not to work to failure. Like Rebecca said, maybe for safety reasons. I think there are other reasons not to work to failure. I think that you can do more work in a given training period, whether that be a session or a week or a block, if you don't always work to failure. Because working to failure takes away from you a lot more than working a little bit farther away from failure. And you were just discussing earlier at lunch, you were talking to me about one of your clients, how you keep him away from failure, because if he goes to failure, then the rest of his training session is shot.
Right. Yeah. Older client. And, and that could be a younger client too, but definitely for an older client, I have to kind of really find that balance between how much I'm allowing him to do as far as like how many reps he really has. I don't want him grinding too much, especially, when it comes to benching or pressing, because he will try to push himself and I have to really put the kibosh on and tell him to rack. And this is somebody who left to his own devices would completely keep pushing that hit that wall with, 300 for 5 on the deadlift. Until he gets 300 for 5 on the deadlift, he's not going up. Well, he hit 330 for a single today because he stopped doing that. But that took a coach. That took someone to tell him what to do and regulate him, but he's starting to learn. I was able to say to him after he did that heavy single, he went down. I said, you have do 3 to 5, because he did a triple last week. I said 3 to 5 reps. That's what I want you to hit. And I said, he goes, I know, you taught me well. I'm not going to push myself to failure. I'm not going to grind out a 5th rep just to get that 5th rep. And sure enough, I watched him from across the gym, hit 1, hit 2, hit 3. He went for the 4th one and he stopped. And I just couldn't, it was perfect, because then he saved himself for that next set that he had to do with a little bit lighter weight. And he flew through that and then moved on to his, his squatting. This is a 72-year-old man, right? This is not a 25-year-old man that I'm working with. But he's someone who is starting to understand where we are going with his program, where we're going, how much better he is at those other weights. It's not looking at where the weights are now. He's looking at just how he leads up to that, what he's able to do now, where he, as Diego was saying, he's made progress because now he's hitting, heavier weights, but it's the weights that he is now hitting after that really means more because he's stronger. Weights that were 10s are now 6s, 7s. But that took time to get that into his head, to help him understand how we're progressing his training and how he's a part of that. And he has to learn to work with me, with himself. And it's made all the difference in how he trains because he's no longer, frustrated. There's nothing that frustrates him. He wants to do well. He's that person who wants to be bigger and stronger at 72. He wants a 225-pound bench. He said, actually, if he could just bench 160, he'd be happy. That's his goal. He wants to be able to do more. So learning to being able to teach him how to, learn to work with himself week in and week out. There was a week where he had a really rough week. Squat was off, bench was off. He threw his hands up, was like, he still got the work in. We still got the work in. The next week, everything was, was perfect, was great. He doesn't get upset anymore. He's learned for himself how to deal with his own training and how to deal with his weight week to week. And that there are going to be weeks where it feels really heavy. And the next week it doesn't feel so heavy. And then next week, he's ready to go up. So perfect example of that. But he had to learn that. And that's something that is difficult for someone who's, and he's not been lifting for quite a year yet, but he's done CrossFit in the past at 70. Yeah. So he knows that. But this is, but he's going to be a very good lifter and, he is, but give him another year or so and it's where he's going to be will probably be pretty remarkable because he's just already starting to be a much better, trainee when it comes to his own training.
Yeah. So, I mean, like if you're training to failure, right, that's less, like Diego, you're saying, like the thing that gets people concerned about RP is the fact that it is subjective, that it's perceived, right? So right. The more, to failure is objective. You can't do anymore. You've completed the maximum amount that you're able to. But if you give people more different ways to consider rate of perceived exertion rather than just like how it feels, right? Like if you can show them on the video, like they look at the video, they get sort of more of a coach's eye view and consider things like bar speed, form deviation, any sort of like physiological signs that they might observe. Like if their face is beet red and their eyes look like they're going to pop out of their head, well, okay, that's a 9.5 or probably a 10. Like any sort of noises, if they're grunting or breathing heavy or, just other physiological signs that they could observe that seem less squishy, subjective, that helps people to learn how to gauge RPE in a way that maybe seems less, woo-woo or touchy-feely, right, or whatever it is that people get up in arms about with RPE. There's some ways to talk about it or think about it, significant form deviation or just a slight deviation on the last rep, those sorts of things that vary.
Right. I mean, ultimately, and I think we have to end here soon. Ultimately, I'm trying to make my clients, my members, independent lifters. I want them to own their training and own their lifting. And this is a big way. This is a very helpful way to help them be able to regulate their own training in my gym and outside of my gym and on to life, because eventually even if they're training with me for years and years and years, I want to be able to see them adjusting themselves and knowing that they are now learning how to continue to get stronger, improve their lifts, improve their technique, because of what we've taught them. If I have to tell them all the time what to do, I haven't done my job. I want to see in a couple, years down the road, Lori, Kelly, those who have really can regulate their training well. They've learned, but they've been with us for a long time, and we've given them those tools. So that's an important part of a lifter's training, is learning how to adapt, and change and grow, and not just, beat your head against the same thing because I'm doing the program says. We'll end there. If we feel like we need to return to this subject, we certainly can. We kind of, got a lot in 1 hour. And again, your questions are always appreciated, or, questions or comments. We want to address them. You can email me at emily@5by3.com or email Rebecca at
cornerstonestrengthmaryland.com or at gmail.com.
Rebecca does online coaching. We do online coaching. Speaking of online coaching, and we do have a tab on our website now for online coaching. So you can click on that tab and check us out. And if you'd like to start working with us online, if you can't see us in person, we're happy to assist you. So we'll be back in a couple weeks with another podcast. Don't know the topic yet. The past couple weeks have been from our listeners. So hopefully maybe we'll get another question, and we'll be able to work that into the podcast. Thanks, Diego. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you.
See you guys soon. Thanks, everybody.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to 5x3 Radio with Emily and Rebecca. If you like our show and want to know more about 5x3 training, please visit us at www.5, that's F-I-V-E, the letter X, the number 3.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. To learn more about Rebecca, please visit her website, cornerstonestrengthmaryland.com. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.